Alright then, so in this one, I'm just going to briefly go over my sort of timeline of how the addiction started for me, how it developed, how it then transformed from NoFap into actually going into paid services, paid coaching, and then how that sort of panned out into actually eventually joining BCA, joining Tom Molyneux and Mary Paulus as an affiliate to then become someone that was able to stop their pornography addiction and stay stopped. We're also going to go over some of the methods that the other programs use as to why they weren't successful to me and how BCA sort of tackles that from an overview of the method perspective. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Alright, so it was around 2006 when I got first exposed to hardcore pornography at the time. And so this scene I remember pretty distinctly when it, came up on screen. On the one hand, I felt a bit disgusted when watching it, but at the same time there was like a jolt of electricity, going through whatever it was in my head. I felt, wow, this is actually pretty insane when I was watching it. I felt that part of the mind really lit up when viewing it, and so after that I became a lot more curious because that sort of scene just stayed in my head for quite a while after that. And before you know it, I get more curious. I'm trying to seek out more content, and then I'm going on my own quest in regards to seeking out pornography, and this is where it all begins. So this was my first solid exposure to it, and this period I say is the good 10 years. So you got a good 10 years here before I tried to actually stop watching it for the first time. So attempting NoFap, getting referred to it through a friend, and realizing that when I tried to stop, it was a lot more difficult than I thought. So yeah, a good 10 years later, I tried to stop. And I just want to highlight here that between here and there, you're very problem unaware. So if we go back to 2006, it was just before I started high school, and in high school, pornography was this thing that was around, and it was quite, it was a taboo thing, but it was very normalized to talk about it. It was still in that period where society was beginning to become a bit more sexualized. It certainly is the case in 2026 that we see around us right now. We're in a very sexualized environment. Between 2006 and 2016 was sort of my first years in high school up to my first 2 or 3 years in university. So this was like peak development years in my youth. And porn was involved in pretty much all of it. And I just want to highlight here that a lot of us, when we start this period after watching porn for the first time, growing up in a sexualized society or growing up where pornography is a very normal thing to engage in, we're very unaware of the problem. We don't actually see it as an addiction. We're not even aware that it could develop into an addiction, especially within this sort of time range, right? These years, if you grew up within these years, you'll probably relate to that. I think in the UK, in the school curriculum, there was this lesson that you have in the timetable. It's called PSE. It might be physical social education or something like that. Not too sure on the P part actually. However, one of the modules of this lesson was covering addiction. So it was very relatable to people who had already started smoking cigarettes and drugs. And it did cover sex, but it didn't cover pornography to that extent within this time range. Perhaps it's different now. I'm pretty sure it's different now that pornography is included in the curriculum. Back in these years, there wasn't too much awareness, as I understand it. Otherwise, I would have probably picked up on it a lot earlier. So yes, porn is something that's very normal within these years of development at this point. So a lot of us are just problem unaware. Pornography is just something that we accept and engage in, and if we engage in it, it's like, oh, it's normal, it's fine, it's just what guys do or girls do. So we go through these first 10 years being problem unaware, and so 2016 comes along and it's my first attempt to stop. So I get introduced to NoFap. I got introduced to NoFap through a friend. He told me about all the benefits, freedoms that it can give you if you abstain from pornography and masturbation. And so I thought, okay, makes sense, because I was in this period in life when I was looking for more confidence. I was looking to grow a bit more, looking to develop myself as a guy, as a lot of us are in university or this age range, right? So I tried NoFap and I tried to stop, and I realized that it was very difficult to try and stop. I was already going straight into the counting streak mentality, trying to hit 6 days or 7 days, feeling really, really disappointed. I think after my third or fourth attempt, my mental health was, that was the start of like the mental health decline. And a lot of us experience that because we just have crazy comparison fatigue with other guys in the NoFap forum, which perhaps they've reported, I'm on 60 days, I'm on 90 days, or I'm a year free from porn. And they're listing all the benefits on their thread, on their posts rather, and you're thinking, damn, like I just feel so far away from that. I can't even get past 6 or 7 days, and this massive streak shame culture within your own life just starts to manifest. And yeah, this was the start of the whole sort of arc for me. So yeah, my first attempt to stop around this year range, 2016 to 2017, and it was my final years of uni at that time. So what do we get into? We got into NoFap, and also aka NoFap willpower, as far as I'm concerned, is the same thing regarding to the methodology that NoFap facilitates, that is. And so replacement behaviors is another one. So going gym more, trying to do run, trying to like study away instead of view pornography, replace it with another behavior such as YouTube or even other drugs, or just like going out more, going out socializing more as a means of replacing the behavior. Meditation was another one. So meditation, at the time, I first read a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This sort of helped sort of declutter my awareness within life at the time, but again, it didn't really address the issue that I had with porn. I still wanted porn, I still kept going back to it, and so even though perhaps it benefited me at that period of time in my life, it didn't actually address the addiction directly. And I think a lot of recommendation for meditation is made through the NoFap forums and through these multiple channels of trying to stop pornography. And like I covered, the shame/streak cycle mentality starts to manifest here, and it just continues when you first try to take on this quest. And so what I also wanted to put here was the negative neural pathways development. We'll get onto neural pathways in a minute, but essentially what this means is that you start to develop this negative relationship with streaks and porn and masturbation, because what you find is that when you try to build a streak on NoFap, let's say you reach 6 or 7 days, your self-worth becomes contingent on how long you can stay away from pornography for. And this sort of molds into other areas of life. It molds into your self-identity. It makes you feel really bad about yourself when you go on a streak and you reach whatever day you reached, and then you relapse, and then you're thinking, oh, all my progress is lost, I'm just a failure, this, that, and the other, and you start feeling really bad about yourself, and it just spirals down, and it affects other areas of life. It affects your well-being, your mental stance, everything. And of course, this isn't a rational position to hold. Then sure, you can look in hindsight that this wasn't the sort of wise mentality to adapt, but the damage has already been done here if you're going down this route of thinking and these thinking patterns. And this is what we tend to call junky thoughts, addicted neural pathways, etc. More on addicted neural pathways in a minute. But yeah, as you can see, this streak/shame cycle mentality just continues through these years all the way up to here. Now we'll get onto that now. So in 2020, when COVID hit, I get into my first paid program. So this first paid program is a year long. I decided, early 2019, I need to get serious about this. I don't want this problem in my life anymore. The streak/shame cycle is just continually wearing me down. And it's built into these addicted neural pathways, these negative neural pathways, just having a bad relationship with porn, putting pornography on a pedestal, thinking that, okay, well, if I can't stop pornography, like I'm just a failure, yada, yada, yada. And a lot of us get into this thinking pattern. And so 2020 comes along and I'm thinking, right, I've got to invest. And so, I do go forward and invest in it. Now, it was a lot more than I could afford to pay in one at the time. So I was paying like monthly installments to pay for the whole thing. But it was double my monthly rent at the time. So But I was committed. I wasn't afraid to put that money up front because I knew that eventually, if I was able to stop pornography, then my mind would just be clear. I wouldn't feel any more mental conflict. I could just move on with life and leave this chapter behind me, because it had already done so much sort of mental chaos in my mind that it was definitely worth the price to pay. And of course, it is definitely worth paying money to solve this problem, but we'll just get on to what works and what doesn't in a moment. So yeah, this first paid program came along. It was a year long. It was during COVID. And I just went through the whole thing. I learned a few good things. The coach was cool. The group of guys that I was with were really relatable. There were a set of tools and these techniques and strategies that I could employ. Unfortunately, this program just didn't work out for me, and I ended up just being deeper in the addiction after the program ended for me. And so at this point, midpoint here, I was thinking, what's wrong with me? Why didn't that first program work? Oh, I must have not worked hard enough. I must be a special case. I can't have done things right. I must be just a lot more addicted than anyone else. So I stayed in this space for, 1, 2, 3 years until we reached 2024. And so in 2024, came across another program, and I was like, right, I'm not going to give up on this. What is the answer here? I can't figure this out. But I'm not going to give up on myself, so I'm going to try again. I'm going to go to another paid program so I can attack it head on one more time. And I remember the moment before investing in this program. I was sitting there in my chair at the time, and I was thinking, why can't I figure this out? This can't be that hard to figure out. There must be some angle I'm not seeing. There must be some sort of mental paradigm which I'm not spotting here, because it can't be that hard to actually stop pornography. There just must be some mental thing that I'm missing. Other guys that are in this situation who do watch porn don't see it the same way I do. They don't feel the shame, the guilt and everything, or at least that's what I thought at the time. And so I was thinking there must be a better way of solving this problem. Anyway, so around August 2024, I invested in my second paid program. Unfortunately, again, didn't get the results that I wanted. Coach was good to talk to. I could relate with the guys. We'll get onto the methods and the strategies in a minute. But ultimately, that did not work out for me either. So you could imagine after, after this program ended at the end of 2024, I was feeling, man, why can't I figure this out? Feeling hopeless, feeling like I can't stop watching porn ever. Feel like I'm just a lost cause at this point, right? And I'm just spiraling out mentally. And bearing in mind, a lot of the stuff in life throughout these 4 or 5 years here, what I think should be understood here is that life in general, such as career, fitness, other areas of life like maturity, social awareness, that is on the rise. The development of those areas of life are on the rise. Maybe is not as fast as I wanted them to sort of rise because of how pornography was weighing my mind down. We'll get onto that. But yeah, being in an addiction, as Mary Paulus says, is like being in a full-time job. There's the engaging part of the addiction where you're engaging in porn in those moments, but it's also the mental conflict, it's the loss of time, it's the loss of sleep, it's the loss of self-integrity, it's all the other mental stuff that you really got to deal with while you're going through life with the other stuff, right? And so like I was saying, even though other areas of my life were improving, there was this massive weight on my shoulders of this pornography addiction where I felt just all the feeling of victories of those other areas were just blunted by this pornography addiction. The fact that I couldn't get past this area was making the victories in the other areas of my life feel a lot less sweet. And I had enough at this point, right? I thought, damn, like there just must be another way, but I'm just going to chill for now and just take a breather and see if I can just manage the addiction, right? And I think a lot of us end up here because we feel very worn down and fed up. And perhaps some of you guys can relate to that. It's early 2025 and I'm sitting there thinking, right, I need to do one more shot at this. I need to give it one more shot. There must be something I can do. I had some more money coming in and I thought, right, okay, there must be another program which I can give a shot. I was actually shopping through a few programs. There was one other guy which I thought was really cool, really helpful on the phone. He really got me in the right track in terms of going onto calls, asking the right questions, what I should be looking for. And then came Tom Molyneux, and I saw his channel, and Beyond Compulsion Academy, that is. And so I clicked on the link to have a chat with him, and he was offering a very different sort of perspective on the problem. And when it comes to watching his videos, it was very relatable. You could relate to the content. When you watched his content, I thought, right, this guy knows the pain, he knows the addiction, he knows what's going on here. He had been trying to stop for about 10 years. I was in the same boat at this point, as we can look, in this date range. And so, this is where I thought, right, Tom's making a lot of sense. When Tom is explaining the addiction and how it's all working, he's making a lot of sense. And so, I took the program, worked with him and Mary Paulus, and never looked back since. And the objective was achieved, going through the education, installing the new mindsets, utilizing the coaching, using the tools to eventually be able to stop and stay stopped. All right, so just before we continue here, I just want to go over the addicted part of the mind development, right? So we're going to talk about addicted neural pathways, like I said before in the previous timeline. So what happens here is that you have frequency over time. You've been engaging for years and years. So if we go back here, we first started in 2006, engaging. And even when we tried to stop, we were engaging. And so we built up this cycle for a mind mood altering experience. We've developed that dependency on a mind mood altering experience, mixed in with all these different thoughts and thought patterns and thinking patterns, which makes the addiction essentially a lot more compelling when you're in those attempts to try and stop. And so we're in this situation, where we've got the predisposition to want to seek out porn, but then we've got the layer of all these thoughts and feelings here, which is essentially the addicted part of the mind, which we'll go on to now. And this makes up the addicted neural pathways, which we're going to address also. So here we go. Be engaging for years and years. It could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, 5 years, a decade, multiple decades. It just works the same. It's the same formula ad infinitum. And so over that time, addicted neural pathways have been developed as it pertains to our compulsive behavior with pornography. So at some point, all that volume, all that watching has caused pornography to become a compulsive behavior in our life. So before we look at these elements by here, I just want to cover the definition of a compulsive behavior really quickly. So in BCA, Beyond Compulsion Academy, we have a definition of a compulsive behavior. So that is a behavior which one engages in over and over, despite the negative consequences that come from engaging in it, with the fact that they are not okay with it. So that sounds very familiar with a pornography addiction, no doubt. And so what can these addicted neural pathways develop? What can they sort of manifest over these years of engaging? Well, we covered the first one earlier. So no-fap culture, where we have this sense of shame and counting streak to streak. So that sort of developed into a thought pattern of every time I'm reaching a certain amount of days and I'm failing on it, or perhaps I didn't reach the amount of days that I wanted to, or perhaps that I've been counting to 40 days, 50 days, 60 days, and then I relapse on day 61. I feel a massive sense of shame because, one, I ended the streak. I just wanted to keep the streak going. And number two, remember we were talking about how over years and years of no-fap mindset and the reinforcement of the no-fap mindset, we get into this thought pattern of our self-worth, our self-identity, our value as a person being contingent on how long we can stay away from pornography. So this is what I'm talking about, these sort of thought patterns that are invoked by the addicted neural pathways. And unfortunately, this becomes a cycle, as we all know, and it perpetuates the cycle of negative feelings, negative emotions, which really is fuel for the addiction. All right, so another one here is escalation. So escalation, you've been engaging for years and years, and you've built up what's known as pretty much a tolerance cycle, like any other drug. So a tolerance cycle starts to build up. And what happens is, over a certain amount of time, if we've been engaging very frequently, we might actually start watching content online which doesn't actually align with our sexual tastes in real life or in the real world. Now, you could attribute that to perhaps something in your past or your personality type or something that happened in your childhood. There might be a factor of that going on, But 80% of the guys that we've talked to, it's normally just a tolerant cycle of pornography for novelty being built up. And so you don't really have to look too far into it. So if you're watching different stuff than you originally used to watch when you first started engaging in porn, this is very expected. Let's not convolute it. Just know that it's the tolerance cycle that's being built up. And what tends to happen is that when you watch more and more perhaps extreme content or content with a lot more novelty attached to it, you might get these feelings of shame and guilt appear because you feel that it doesn't align with your values or your sexual tastes. So there's another one. Now another one we can look at is the spiritual/religious violation. That's another very common one. So if you're actually very rooted in your faith, you may think that you may come across the thought pattern where you have this incongruency with the values that you hold. So in your religion, pornography is not allowed or it's frowned upon. Makes total sense. And from that position, you have this understandable feeling of shame which stems from that. So that's pretty sort of clear cut. And so overall, when you're trying to go through life, you feel very disconnected from God perhaps. You feel disconnected from your prayers. You feel disconnected from the spiritual element of the religion that you're practicing. And that's very understandable when you're in this cycle. And then I put here etc. because there's a lot more variations of similar thoughts here which can be relatable to other people. We all have our own sort of individual ones that we may come across, and so you can just add them to the chart here. But essentially, it's all part of the addicted neural pathways. Those addicted neural pathways invoke all these thought patterns to keep you in the addiction, to keep you feeling helpless and hopeless, feeling that you can't stop the addiction, because ultimately what the addicted part of the mind wants is to get you to engage in your compulsive behavior as frequently as it can. The addicted part of the mind isn't exactly working against you. Like we said, its frequency over time of engaging in pornography, of this very high stimulus activity, has developed that dependency to a mind and mood altering experience. And because the brain perceives that that is a big reward that it can get from engaging in this activity, it's just going to try and shortcut its way to that activity to get you to engage in it. And so it will do anything it can, aka get you into these thought patterns to make you more compelled to engage these feelings, getting you into this sense of hopelessness and helplessness, so you can just think, forget it, and just engage in the behavior. And that's what the addicted part of the mind ultimately wants. Alright, nice. So regarding the two other paid programs that I had here, so the first one in 2020, the second one in 2024, let's go over some of the methodologies and strategies that we encountered in there. Alright, so the first one is accountability partners. So in the first pay program that I took, I was assigned a accountability partner. I think there may be 1, 2 or 3 of them actually, and we were assigned them. We joined a WhatsApp group with each other, and we just had that point of contact with each other, keeping each other accountable, perhaps exchanging a few words. When we were feeling the urges, we typed in the group, listen, I'm feeling the urge, can I talk, yada yada. And this is what happens in NoFap. I think when you're in the NoFap forum, you can also find other guys that want accountability partners, and it sort of works in the same way. The problem that I had with accountability partners within this program was that, number one, the accountability partner on the time of when you needed help. So when you felt an urge come along, you felt that, okay, I need to reach out. But however, an accountability partner wasn't actually available most of the time. So even if you reached out, it's pretty much essentially when you're in this mindset, you're feeling the urge, you reach out, there's no response. And so it's too late at that point. You're already in the throes of feeling the urge, you're in the addiction, and one thing leads to another. Thought after thought after thought, you end up engaging anyway and you relapse, and that strategy wasn't that effective. Another thing that I came across was, say if I actually felt the urge, I reached out and I did get in contact with an accountability partner. The other problem was, sure, I could get on the phone with them or I could message them, talk to them for a little bit and say, okay, well, I'm now in a better mental place and I've sort of processed the urge, if you want to call it that, by talking to my accountability partner. I get off the call and I'm not feeling the urge anymore. Okay, great. But then an hour passes and I'm feeling the exact same urge again, or even a stronger urge. And then I'm there in my mind, okay, should I reach out to them because I just talked to them and I don't want to feel like I'm bothering them. And if I reached out to them again, then they might think, oh, okay, this is a sort of like a chore or something like that. And sure, you might be in the mental culture that was promoted by the program that you shouldn't feel this way about accountability partner. But you have to understand is that when you have addicted neural pathways, when you have that mental stance of feeling helpless, feeling hopeless, a lot of those rational thoughts don't cross your mind. What you find is that you feel like you're bothering other people, or perhaps they're in a different time zone and they are actually going to bed, or they are going to spend time with family. And so the availability sort of fluctuates, and you end up in a situation where, sure, that accountability may have helped a bit. You may have been able to relate to your partner in terms of urges and related to them that way, being in the addiction. That is as far as it goes in terms of trying to actually overcome the compulsive behavior. It doesn't rewire addicted neural pathways. It doesn't address the desire or process the desire in the correct way. So accountability partners is definitely not the way to go. Another thing about accountability partners is that if you enter that sort of partnership, you're sort of mentally putting yourself in a position, or you're conceding a mental position where you feel as though you can't do this on your own. And that isn't a mental position of strength. And it's essential to be in a mental position of strength when it comes to overcoming this compulsive behavior, because you certainly are strong enough to do so if you have the right tools, if you have the right mindset and methodology. All right, the second one, coach accountability. So this can work similar to accountability partners, so like other people who are in the addiction being assigned to you as an accountability partner. Coach accountability can work in a similar way, but also what I'm referring to here is that a coach is keeping you accountable on your perhaps recovery goals or something like that. So they would keep you accountable on, are you doing the other work outside of the addiction that's keeping you on track to building a better life? They could keep you accountable on your sort of life goals. Are you going gym regularly? Are you eating right? Are you journaling? Are you meditating? Are you seeing family? Are you going to help your community? Sure, they're all good things to be kept accountable for. However, these things, as we're going to get onto, are very indirect ways of addressing a compulsive behavior. It's sort of like managing your life while you're in a compulsive behavior, while you're in an addiction. And as we spoke about before, being in an addiction is a full-time job on top of all the other life stuff that you're going through, that you're dealing with, that you're working on. And so again, this isn't a sustainable strategy to move through the addiction, to go towards stopping and staying stopped. Okay, next up is a good one. So weekly group calls. So in BCA, the current one that I'm in, and the one that got me to stop and stay stopped, we have weekly group calls. So in general, they are very good. These are very good things to have. They keep you locked in. They keep the mind reinforced. They're very relatable. Going over the material with the coaches and your peers. So these are good things to have. The only thing that can be a drawback is if that you're talking about the wrong thing within the group calls. If you're not going back to the core principles of a method, of a protocol within these weekly group calls, and let's say you're sort of covering different topics each weekly call. So let's say on a weekly group call, you're covering how to be better in relationships. And then the next group call is, okay, it's just a sharing group call. Are you sharing your wins and your losses on the week? Or another one could be, okay, we're going to talk about finances and developing as a person with your finances. The weekly group call has to consistently come back to a method, to a principle. How are you doing on that principle? How are you doing on that method? We're all focusing on the same thing, to stop the behavior and stay stopped. So anti-trigger culture. This comes sort of back into the nofap culture. So again, avoiding triggers is this sort of mentality where you're sort of taking yourself out of an environment or away from things that you deem as quote unquote triggering, such as ads on YouTube or social media, deleting all these things, staying away from triggers. And what I want to say about this, similar to accountability partners, if you're in an anti-trigger mindset, you're trying to avoid triggers and keep away from them and constantly be on edge about it, you're again conceding to a mental position of vulnerability, of weakness, of running away. And what you want to be going towards is that you want to be going towards that position of mental strength, because you can stay strong. Something can come up You can run a protocol and you can stay solid, you can stay strong. You don't have to be always running away, always trying to avoid triggers. As long as you have the right education, the right system, you can stop and stay stopped wherever happens, whatever comes in your way in life. And I just want to mention as well, with an anti-trigger mindset in the 21st century, of setting yourself up for very unrealistic expectations if you feel that you're not going to come across triggers. The thing is, you don't need a trigger for compulsive desire to be invoked. You could just be sitting there working at your desk with no triggers and a compulsive desire comes up. The urge comes up from nowhere. And so it's dealing with these moments of compulsive desire, which is the thing to focus on here, not so much avoiding triggers. Next one, health and fitness culture. Health and fitness, great, a good thing to focus on. However, as a mechanism, as an angle of trying to stop a compulsive behavior, as an angle of trying to stop pornography and stay stopped, again, it's not addressing the issue directly. Sure, make that a part of your life, but it isn't going to address the problem at its core, because the whole thing of having compulsive desire when it comes up is a mental. It isn't to do with, replacing it with push-ups or going to the gym when you feel the urge, streamlining your diet. Look, these are good things to focus on in life, but it's a separate thing as it pertains to recovering from a pornography addiction. Resolve repressed emotions. So this one was a big one, the first program that I did. So there's a lot of angles where I can address this very specific issues of repressed emotions. Firstly, with the time permitted in this presentation, I'll just focus on the one. So one of them, for example, is childhood traumatic experiences, so aka childhood trauma, and the repressed emotions that you may have developed from that period. So some people will say, trauma is something that needs to be addressed and worked on as the root cause of a porn addiction. Now, just to mention, it may well be the case that from a traumatic experience, you could have started to use pornography to cope with strong emotions that stem from that traumatic experience. No problem, but over time, you actually may have gotten over that trauma, you may have gotten over those repressed emotions. And so it's very hard to pinpoint what's actually going on here if you're just focusing on these repressed emotions. Because like I said, as a mind mood altering experience dependency has been developed over years and years of engaging, it might simply be that when you just feel these urges, when you feel this discomfort, it might just be the case that you're just really wanting to watch porn at that time, and it's not really related to anything else. Just to bring it back to what we were saying about triggers, you don't really need a reason to engage in your compulsive behavior when compulsive desire comes up. All the addicted part of the mind wants is just to engage in porn, is to get those feel-good chemicals flowing. It just wants to relieve the temporary discomfort in that moment. And so what we want to do here is shift the focus away from whatever sort of repressed emotions that we think that are stemming this, and more towards what do we do in those moments of compulsive desire to stop and stay stopped. What do we do living in the present moment? How do we act in the present moment when an urge comes up? Repeat that protocol for every urge over and over and over and over again to stop pornography and stay stopped. Okay, the next one is, so in my first program that I did this thing called the morning routine. So a morning routine ritual would be journaling all the thoughts that came up. Again, I think it was a sort of exercise that would address anything that we see here in the repressed emotions box. I couldn't really see the end game of that exercise. Sure, it was useful to track how I felt every day, and sure, it was perhaps useful of me becoming more of an aware person of my mental state when I was starting my day. Half the time, however, I was just thinking, damn, I just want to watch porn, I just want to watch that scene right now. And again, when I was going through this exercise, I was really trying to figure out where the utility would come from. Let's say if I gathered the data of what emotions I was feeling at that time in the morning, paired with the fact that perhaps I could realize something that happened back in my past, back in the childhood days. Even if I had that discovery, I was still trying to pinpoint how I'm going to apply this when I'm feeling those urges for porn in those critical moments of compulsive desire. Again, shifting the focus from indirect to the direct stuff that happens within those urges, within those moments of craving pornography. Cool, so next one. Both programs included worksheet-based tools. So worksheet-based tools, yeah, they're useful, I think, depending on what the content is. But again, a lot of the worksheets I was filling in were just to track wins on other areas of life, to track my triggers. And so I didn't really find this useful within the moment when the urges come up. I would in fact just like dash it to the side and be like, I just want to watch porn right now. So again, worksheets are good. It just depends what the worksheet is for. Does it address compulsive desire in the moment, or does it not? And if it does address compulsive desire in the moment, does it hit the mental checkpoints that it needs to hit in order to be at peace with the urge and embrace the discomfort in the moment and process the urge correctly? Next one are blockers, device blockers. I don't know what you guys think about it. Blockers never work for me. I always find my way around them. It would perhaps work for like 2-3 weeks, and then I would just find my way around them. The compulsive desire was just, I felt at the time, my junky thoughts would be like, okay, well, the porn is just, I want the porn so much right now. And so I would just find my way around the blocker, every time. Even if there was an accountability partner system attached to that, I would still find my way around it. I would probably get another device and watch it on a different secret device or whatever you want to call it. Blockers just weren't effective for me. And again, like we were saying about the other stuff, it puts you in a position of running away. It puts you in that mental stance of weakness and not strength. It doesn't put you in an attacking, powered stance. It puts you in a passive, running away stance. So this is definitely what we don't want. Relationship coaching. Again, it's one of those things which doesn't address the compulsive desire correctly. Yes, it's something that you should do. Yes, it's something that we all want to sort of work on. But again, it's not directly addressing the compulsive behavior. Many guys that I've met and spoke to are in an active relationship, are in an active marriage, and they're still trying to figure out why they're watching porn while in a sexual relationship with their significant other. Again, it's not addressing the core mechanism of what do I do when I feel the urges when they come up? How do I process it correctly? How do I stop it? How do I stop my compulsive behavior and stay stopped? Counting culture, another one. So in my second paid program, I had this culture of sending a text to my coach at the end of every single day and tell him what day I was on and what I was feeling on that day. Again, counting is based in the future, it's future thinking, it does not root you in the present moment, it certainly doesn't address any compulsive desire when it comes up in the moment. It's just this stat that you're trying to build up, it's sort of gamification of stopping your compulsive behavior, and it really just takes the focus out of it. And like we were mentioning earlier with the whole counting and shame relationship, it just continues the convolution down the line. So definitely not the way to go. So finance goals culture, that's another one. Like relationships, like health and fitness, an indirect approach to trying to solve a compulsive behavior. Yes, it's important, but as it pertains to stopping a compulsive behavior, it's definitely not something that we want to be focusing on. Video modules, again, good. So video modules in a program is definitely something that you want. You want material education to read over, providing it's the right education, providing it's education that addresses compulsive desire directly, and it's education that actually covers the core mechanism of the addiction and not many other things. And also, the thing I want to say about video modules is that sometimes you can have good content. You can actually have good content on how to move through an addiction, how to manage an addiction, how to eventually stop an addiction and stay stopped. The other angle of video modules is that if it's not packaged correctly, and if it's not packaged in a simple sequential order for clients to go through, and instead they're trying to sort of take one video, take another video and try to piece the method together, it just renders very ineffective. You could have the best video modules in the world, but if it's not structured in the right way, and if it's not boiled down to a simple method, they can be rendered quite noisy and ineffective. So as long as it's done right, then great. Community posts, again, another very good one. All of the paid programs I've been on have had this. It's very good to read community posts and read the feedback from other guys in the group and the coaches and touch base with each other, sharing your wins, sharing your thoughts, sharing the things that come up when you have that compulsive desire. Perhaps you had this thought, you want to share it. Perhaps you had this challenge regarding your addicted neural pathways. definitely share it. So community posts are a very good thing, as long as you're not posting noise and posting things that are convoluting a load of stuff, as long as you're not posting things that are completely sort of irrelevant to sort of rewiring your neural pathways and rewiring your mind to get yourself in a position where you can stop pornography and stay stopped, then yeah, very good. Cool, so essential reading is another one. So I remember we were told to read certain books in the first two paid programs. Again, the reading was good. I found the reading quite interesting. It's good to see what other perspectives in the world are out there regarding compulsive behaviors and porn addiction in this case. Unfortunately, I'm not sure. I didn't think it sort of worked that well in terms of getting me to focus on what was important. I don't regret reading stuff. It's always good to read, but again, it was just sort of, okay, why is this reading relevant? How do I integrate it into my, life? How do I actually integrate it into a strategy that works? And it wasn't too effective at the time. Don't get me wrong. In the first program that I did, there was a concept of behavior replacement, which we were all expected, which we were instructed to implement during our time in the program. But again, even that method, like replacement behaviors, is not that effective in the long run of trying to change your addictive neural pathways to pornography. Another one, masculinity coaching. So masculinity, there's a lot of channels about it within the space of porn addiction recovery. A lot of channels will use masculinity as a way to sort of market the content, which is fine. We all have our ways of going about doing these things. I think as long as you're able to present what it is within masculinity, which is going to enable a mechanism that will enable addressing compulsive desire, stopping and stay stopped in an efficient way, then great. Otherwise, it just convolutes the situation. It makes you think, well, if I can't stop, it means I'm not disciplined. And if a man isn't disciplined, then I can't be a man. All this kind of language that can convolute. Again, it's important, no doubt, like fitness, like health, like finance. You want to work on these behaviors. Just ensure that you have a protocol, something simple that addicts can follow in order to stop a compulsive behavior and stay stopped. And so, like I mentioned earlier, replacement behaviors, they work the same way. If you're trying to replace a behavior such as pornography, I'm going to jump out my chair and do 60 push-ups as soon as I feel the urge. Or I'm going to do something else just to get over the urge, the feeling of the urge in that moment. You're still not addressing the desire directly. You're still not embracing the discomfort and facilitating the rewiring process, which is definitely something that you want to be looking towards doing. So replacement behaviors is, again, avoiding the problem and not confronting it. So as you can see, a lot of these that we see up here are just indirect approaches, doesn't connect with the desire when it comes up directly in those critical moments of compulsive desire, skirts around the problem by trying to solve the addiction, the addictive mechanism in an indirect way, working on other areas as opposed to the area of critical importance directly. Okay, so now we go over to the Beyond Compulsion method. So this is a very sort of top-down overview of the method. Of course, there's a lot of nitty-gritty within the actual method itself and the education and the coaching itself, but this is sort of a top layer explanation of what you'd expect to see within this. And so this is the third paid program that I tried in the start of 2025, and this is the method that got me to stop and stay stopped. Most importantly, stayed stopped, right? So we've got a few components here. We've got the education and the coaching, and then we'll cover the tool as we go along. So first of all, the education. So the core focus is on the primary mechanism, which is the addicted neural pathways. So like we were talking about back here, the coaching, the education and the coaching directly addresses everything that we see here, which is essentially the urges and the discomfort as it comes up in the moment, dealing with the thoughts, dealing with all these unanswerable questions that we encounter in these moments, those turning the fear into confidence, turning the passive nature of feeling an urge into an attacking stance of facing it head on. So core focus on the primary mechanism, addicted neural pathways. So we're looking to overwrite the NoFap, willpower, trauma resolving mentality. So the mentality that we may have picked up in these other programs or NoFap, we're looking to overwrite the mental software that we installed over years and years of engaging in NoFap and just engaging in pornography in general. So clarity on navigating the first person experience of addiction, withdrawal, urges and discomfort, and change the mental software, as I was saying, to operate from a place of strength and confidence rather than fear and running. So the education would involve the video modules, the material that you'll find in the various exercises that we do in the Beyond Compulsion Academy, trying to get the mindset right, the reality of the things to expect in the period of withdrawal. So from here we move on to the coaching. So the education and coaching go hand in hand. So core emphasis on assisting navigating the core issue of addicted neural pathways. So like I was saying, there are all sorts of thoughts that can come up within withdrawal, all sorts of feelings, all sorts of different takes on the urge, all sorts of unanswerable questions that can come up in the mind when you're feeling urges, when you're feeling discomfort, when you're in the grey area of between each urge. You may feel like sort of these thoughts come up, questioning why you're doing this, questioning, is this going to work? All these are just thoughts from the addicted part of the mind. Totally expected. It's totally expected to feel that this method isn't going to work. It's totally expected to have these thoughts of helplessness and hopelessness when you're going through the initial stages of any program, and especially BCA, given that it's quite different to a lot of the programs and a lot of the surface level content that you see online nowadays. So you'll definitely have these thoughts of, oh, is this going to work for me? And this is a very expected thought pattern from engaging in all this other content, which has led us down the same road of engaging in willpower, engaging in no-fap mentality. So we have weekly calibration sessions on the learning phase modules. So you'll have a set of modules which you'll go through, because once you enter the program, you're going to be informed that, look, you're not ready to stop just yet. You need to go through the learning phases, install the new mental software before you can move on. And once you've actually grasped the mental software, the new way of thinking, then you're ready to move on. And so the weekly calibration sessions are sort of these like checking calls that you can go into just to make sure that you're on the right track, just to make sure that the elements have clicked into place in your mind before you move on. And you can attend this as many times as you want throughout the weeks. And of course, we got the weekly straight line group calls. We'll get onto the straight line in a minute, but essentially the straight line is the period of when you've learn all the material and you're ready to stop, and you take the decision to stop, and then you're on what we call the straight line. Next one is the emphasis of returning to the core principles of the method focused approach. Like we were saying in group calls earlier, within these group calls we're going straight back to the method, straight back to the core principles of the program, focusing on one thing and one thing only, using the method in order to get through junky thoughts, in order to get through discomfort and urges onto the other side of urges and staying stopped. Emphasis on using the core repeatable rewiring tool of the method. Again, we'll always refer back to the main principles like we were saying here, but also using this tool that we have in the BC method called the 5-fact script. This is a repeatable tool that you can deploy in those moments of compulsive desire in order to think through the choice of engaging in the urge, in order to think through the urges, process urges correctly, think through the choice, facilitate the choice, get through the urge from a position of strength and power, knowing what to do, knowing how to handle all the thoughts and feelings that come up when you have an urge. As of 2026, it's pretty much a 6-day-a-week operation. We have the weekly group calls, and also the coaches are directly available via WhatsApp within those times, so they'll get back to you with any questions that they have. And yeah, it's a good sort of feedback system, a great service that has been provided ever since I've joined. And so at this point, we have this situation where, okay, we've gone through the education and alongside the coaching, and so eventually we come to the situation where we make the decision whether we're ready to stop, whether we've grasped the information, whether we've installed the new mental software, where we've understood all the coaching elements that have been involved. So when we reach this stage, we're like, do we get this yet or do we not get this? Okay, perhaps we're not clear on a few things, so we go, no, we're not ready to stop just yet. we might need to sort of refine a few things maybe we didn't get so far. So we go back to the learning phase and we touch upon the method a bit more, and then we go back. Are you ready to stop? Yes, we're ready to stop. And so what we say is we go on to the straight line. So what happens is here is we come across the urges inevitably. You cannot stop urges, they will inevitably come up. The key here is to know what to do, know how to embrace urges, know how to process urges correctly when they come up from a position of strength and power, from a position where you're knowing what to do. And what we do is we use the script. So we mentioned back here the 5-fact script by here. So each time an urge comes up here, these black circles here, we use a script on each of them. So the script is used to facilitate the choice. More on the script in a minute, but you can see it's a timeline. We're not counting days. We're not focusing on how long we're staying off porn. We're not focusing on like any sort of counting at all. All we're doing is staying on this green line. Green line basically just meaning the present moment, and it doesn't matter whether you have like 5 urges in a day, 1 urge in a day, or like you have 5 urges over the course of a month. It doesn't matter. The point is to focus on the present moment and to focus on when an urge comes up, just deal with it in that moment. Stay in the present moment. We're not thinking into the future, we're not thinking into the past. We're just focused on a repeatable method. Every time we come across an urge, we repeat this method, we read the script, we think through the choice, we facilitate the choice in the moment. And what will happen is, and Tom had a good analogy for this over in BCA, he mentions that once you go through each urge, every victory over an urge sort of compounds, right? So you get through the first one, you compound the victory, it compounds, you get more self-integrity, more self-confidence, and you can even sort of reinforce it. You can use the script outside of an urge if you choose to. It's not something that's mandatory, of course. It's something that's recommended because you're just, again, reinforcing the neural pathways, preparing for an urge perhaps, and even just feeling good just reading the tool, reading the 5-fact script in the moment, because it's very simple. It's a very easy thing to do. It's repeatable, and it gets you connected into the right neural pathways. So you can just read the script if you want to without feeling an urge, but you know what I'm saying. So it's sort of like a savings account, right, where the wins compound over time, and confidence, self-integrity, the feeling of peace of mind just compounds. You're just repeating the same process over and over again. Don't get me wrong, you're feeling discomfort, you're feeling urges. Urges can be strong, urges can be weak. You may have difficult days, difficult in the sense that you may be going through turbulence in that day with the urges, but as long as you stick to the principles, you stick to the script, you're proactive with the script, you're in an attacking stance with the simple method of the script, then you're on the straight line and you'll be fine. And yeah, you just move on with life after that, keep on repeating. And the point here is that you have peace of mind. You know what to do when an urge comes up. You're not in the state of panic. You're not in the state of anxiety when you feel an urge is going to come up. You're not feeling that you don't know what to do anymore. You just know how to handle yourself when you have an urge. So this is just a completely different way of looking at the problem. It's a completely different way of sort of rewiring your mind away from pornography in this sense, right? And so that's great. So here we just going to cover the 5-fact script very briefly. There's a lot of course, when we go to the education module over here, you'll have this education module explaining the rationale behind the sort of latent conditions that everyone sort of comes with, because we all come from different places. Some of us come from NoFap, some of us come through therapy or just pure willpower. So this education is sort of to get us onto the base level. The coaching goes alongside with that, but what we're looking to do here is build a script which hits key principles, and then you have a layer of personalization of what the benefits and drawbacks are for yourself, you as an individual, when it comes to engaging in porn, because there's always going to be drawbacks of engaging in porn, and for each of us it's going to be different for each of us, right? But essentially for all of us it covers all of these main points here. So we have the base education, training and coaching. And so what the 5-fact script is designed to do is, number one, get us into the present moment, get us rooted in the present moment, and acknowledge that you want to engage in porn. A lot of us actually come from the no-fap mindset and thinking that we don't actually want to engage in porn. We've sort of convinced ourselves with the language that we don't want to engage in porn because of the consequences that it sort of brings us after. But that isn't actually the rational position to adopt, because if we didn't want to watch porn, we wouldn't watch it, we wouldn't engage in it. On some level, or on a very compelling level, you do want to watch pornography. You just don't want the consequences of watching pornography. So getting into the right mindset, getting into the right rational position, although it might be something that's very small, it might be a very small adjustment, it does make the difference. So the second thing, addressing any feeling of deprivation thinking that I can't, I must not, etc. Again, this is a concept that in the modules isn't explained very well, but it's essentially acknowledging that you have the choice to engage at any time. You can always go back into the addiction if you choose to. You're always in the driver's seat, you're always in control. It gets you out of that situation of helplessness, of not being in control, into somebody that is in control. And the key here is that feelings of deprivation are very unpleasant feelings to deal with, which convolute the addicted part of the mind, which really adds on to the friction produced by addicted neural pathways. It really adds a lot of emotional baggage and heavy negative feelings on your mind, and it weighs very heavily on your mind. Even though, again, it's a small sort of mindset shift that you want to go through, it's a critical one to go through. Again, the authors of the freedom model also completely attest to this. It's essential to get over feelings of deprivation to a mental position of clarity and objective thinking. Number 3, acknowledge the reality of engaging in your compulsive behavior even once. So even if you engage in your compulsive behavior once, you're going to feel the consequences. You'll be back in a cycle indefinitely. That's just the reality of the situation. Number 4, clearly list the benefits and consequences of engaging your compulsive pornography behavior. And again, to finish it off, we're not trying to stop the urge, we're not trying to get rid of the urge, we're just trying to facilitate the choice. We're not trying to get rid of the urge, we're just trying to embrace the discomfort from a position of strength and power. We're not trying to get rid of the urge. In fact, on the contrary, it's not about if I have less urges, I'm more successful. It's always about being in the moment. When an urge comes up, you just know how to deal with it correctly. That is how success is measured within this timeline. I just want to mention here that with all this information, with all this methodology, when it comes to addicted neural pathways, when it comes to BCA, the Beyond Compulsion method, what's critical to understand here is that it doesn't matter where you are. Again, if we go back to the definition of a compulsive behavior here, a behavior which one engages in over and over despite the negative consequences that come from engaging in it, with the fact that you're not okay with it, addresses all bases. It doesn't matter if you're a guy that is gooning every single day for maybe 8, 9, 10 hours a day, or perhaps you're somebody else which maybe reaches 90 days or 120 days, relapses once and then goes into a little binge period, feels all the negative consequences, and then gets sort of quote unquote back on track as they see it, and then goes for another cycle only to relapse again in the same way. If the behavior follows this pattern, you're in that state of compulsion, it is the same category and you want to deal with it in the same way. Sure, there might be different degrees to which the composition of neural pathways have been formed and developed within each individual person. That's a given. There are different degrees of how someone has been exposed, how long they've been exposed, how long they've been engaging. But the core principle of rewiring is the same, whatever situation you're in. It is absolutely possible to get that mental freedom, to stop and stay stopped. Alright, so chances are if you landed on this video, you might be in this time of your life where you're trying to actually solve this problem of pornography addiction, why you can't stop, and I've been there all the way. And so what I wanted to do was touch base on a few points that you might be able to relate to. So the first point I want to mention here is that you've been engaging for years and years since you were young, and there's nothing wrong with you for that. Chances are you've been addicted since you were 12 or 13 years old, and for a lot of cases maybe even younger, starting at 8 or 9 years old, because chances are if you grew up in the West, you grew up in a very sexualized society where porn is very normalized. And so when you first came across pornography, you didn't see that there was anything wrong with it, and before you know it, you escalated the behavior into an addiction without being aware. Now, we covered it in this video earlier. And at this point, you've been trying a lot of things to stop, but you haven't quite landed on the solution that has actually worked for you. You may have gone through NoFap, you may have tried a few different paid programs here and there. But yeah, I just want to hammer the point home. There is nothing wrong with you for being in this situation. So point number 2, you've been trying all these different methods over the years to try and stop. Tried to find the reasons, tried to find the right help, but all the approaches didn't address the desire directly. So like we mentioned in the video, we covered a few of these things. This hits the point home on that one. So number 3, the key here is to connect with the desire when it comes up in a correct, systematic way that covers all bases on a mental level. Something simple that can be repeated and applied in those moments, leading you into a position where you can stop and, most importantly, stay stopped. And so number 4, at BCA, we have the tools and the education to allow you to achieve exactly that result. And so one more thing I want to leave you with is, if you're considering perhaps jumping on a call with me, what I would encourage you to do is build a list of questions about what you might want to ask me when you join the call. I know this is a very important situation for you to resolve in your life. You just want to move past it. And if you're going to get on a call with me, it's best to get all the answers that you need to get clear on all the things that you might have doubts about, that you might not understand right now. And I think this will be the good time to build those list of questions to ask me if you're interested in booking a call with me, so we can see if BCA is the right fit for you. Click on the link in the description to take you to the addiction quiz. From the results, you'll know whether you have a compulsive behavior with porn or not. You don't have to opt in for further interest in BCA, and we'll just send you over the test results to your email.